beautiful people from all around the world. Good evening and welcome back to yet another community watch party for a Pantheon developer update stream. Hope you enjoyed that more embellished intro a little bit. If you tuned in early, you might have noticed that my editor and I, mostly my editor, but my editor and I have been working on just sprucing it up a little bit and make it a little bit more fun to watch. We have actually a couple more slight tweaks coming to it, but anyway, yeah, we're a little early. Like I said, continuing my tradition of kicking these off a little bit early. So the dev stream is going to be starting in about 27 minutes from now, but you know, I like to build in a little bit of time to just kind of hang out with you. See, we already got some people in chat like K-Lock, Lambasted, Clueless Cargo, Animate Acumen, Retro Jim, Goofy Warrior Guy. We've got the early crowds, the early birds hanging out. I'm just kind of catch up with you guys. This has been a pretty busy month, at least for me, and it's there's a lot to talk about. So the developer update stream tonight is going to be, from the promo that I saw, it seems like it's going to be focused on balancing and character progression, which is interesting. And Saicred, who actually used to be a part of the community for a while and has now joined the developer team, and he is, from the sounds of it, totally rocking the game designer role and really digging deep into the numbers. You know, he's a numbers guy, math guy, really crunching those numbers. So we're gonna hear more about that tonight, which should be interesting. But Bjorn to be wild, let you live. I see you guys too. You're also here. But how about that producer's letter that we got a few days ago? Want to get you guys' thoughts on that. I made a video about it on YouTube, pretty long video actually, a lot longer than I normally do. Well, I did a Baz Flash about it, which I do for pretty much every producer's letter, because if you didn't know, they haven't really clarified what their content release protocols are. Obviously, we have these monthly live streams on the first Thursday of every month, and then they do a developer roundtable, which is with Kilson. They record those on the last Friday of every month, but then release them to the public the Friday after that. But producers letters has kind of changed, and again, like, I can't really blame people for not being able to keep up with it, but right now producers letters only really come out when they have, you know, big worthwhile announcements. And so it's not necessarily every month, it's not the same time every month, but when we do get a producer's letter, you know, it's going to have something pretty meaty to it. And you know, I like to boil that down to just a minute, because I know that there's a lot of people, you know, out there that want to, you know, at least keep up with what's going on in Pantheon's development, but just, you know, there's lots of other things going on in the world too, in the game industry, outside the game world, and so hopefully, you know, that helps you keep in touch a little bit easier. But so I did that, but then also dug in with like a 40-minute very casual video, kind of dissecting it and giving some of my own personal thoughts on it. But and in that video, I asked you guys to comment. I've been reading a lot of really interesting comments from both sides, like pretty mixed. It seems like some good different perspectives. Reading the comments about, you know, how you guys interpreted that. Goofy Warrior Guy says, I just want them to just hurry up and do the network stack upgrade. Oh yeah, if only it was that simple. That's gonna be interesting to watch, though, for sure. It's gonna be a big piece of the puzzle. K-Lock says that seems to be the hard part of the moment. It's definitely a big chunk of it. Born to be Wild says, would have really hoped for alpha in 2021, to be honest, but I appreciate the list of specific items they're looking to get there. I agree with your take, though, that some of the items seem a bit more than I would have expected for alpha. Yeah. And actually, my perspective, while mostly the same, has slightly evolved. Again, like talking to other people about it and reading comments about it. You know, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about it, and one thing that I realized, I wish I had talked about it more in the video that I made, because it was just kind of an assumption that it was an assumption that I was running with, that I also assumed everybody else kind of knew, which I shouldn't have, because it's been a while since VR has really talked about it, and so I wish they had also ideally would have just put it in the producer's letter. But something that I think a really important factor in all this is that they're also planning on doing like a huge marketing push in alpha, and that includes, you know, opening it up to more streamers, like a lot, you know, just not just like me and Minus and Nate, like a lot of other people who have never streamed Pantheon before, being a lot more free with that, and, you know, the NDA and that sort of stuff to some degree. I don't know exactly to what degree, but, you know, that's the direction, that's where they want to be. And so that, I think, helps provide some important context to this whole to the whole polishing thing, because it's not just about the people who have been pledged to alpha that are going to be seeing it, you know what I mean? Now I still think that there's a subset of those alpha pledgers that pledged just a long time ago and have really kind of just tuned out, you know, have been tuned out for maybe years, and are going to be coming kind of back into it sort of fresh. So there's that aspect of it. I think that those people are probably kind of in the minority. I think most of them are at least semi in touch with what's going on. But yeah, if they really want to do a big like marketing push to really capitalize on that wave of excitement that would naturally surround the game when they open up alpha, you know, if they want that to be most effective, you know, you're going to be reaching people who literally have never heard of the game before. For us who have been, you know, aware of it for so long, it's kind of hard to imagine, but it's totally true. There's just so many people out there that literally are just oblivious to its existence. And so if they're going to be, you know, if they're going to be finding out about it for the first time, it needs to be in good shape, because the whole just like, oh, well, it's going to be this, like they need to end that like pretty soon. So the game kind of if it's going to be opened up to more streamers and that sort of thing, like it needs to be able to stand on its own 2 feet. Now, with that said, I still think that there are a few things on their list that, from my perspective, is like not really necessary in my opinion. Somebody brought up the point though that, you know, it could also be an aspect of it. From a programming standpoint, though, that there are some things that just need to be done in a certain order. I don't really have the expertise to really speak to confidently about that, but it was kind of an interesting thought that like some things from the outside looking in, it might seem like a decision might seem so stupid to us, you know what I mean? But from the inside, they're in some cases maybe a little bit of like method to the madness, as far as, you know, in order to get this other thing that is really necessary, you need to do this other thing first that might not seem as necessary but is still, you know, going to have to be done eventually anyway, and if you put it off till later, it's going to be more of a pain. So there might be some of that involved too, but I'm not sure. And yeah, I see what you're saying too about we never really had a date, but there have been hints about a late 2021. That's kind of an interesting thing too, is I don't know, maybe this is just the way I read it, is that earlier this year, Chris Rowan, he seemed to, well, he was hinting that, like, they're pushing hard for alpha in 2021, and he said something like the company is throttled by available resources, and with the right resources, it's something that's possible, or it's something that can be accomplished. And that seemed to, the way I was reading the producer's letter, is it seemed to be in line with that, where it was like, it's possible. They by no means can guarantee it, but it's also, not guaranteed to be next year either. So it's like, it's sort of the thing where it's like, if this, if things go smoothly, especially if the evaluation build keeps doing its thing and they get more investments like soon, that will accelerate the pace. And so it's possible under the right circumstances, that maybe we do get like a December 2021 announcement, something, or at least I think they either need to be at that point or at least very close to that point. Like it should be within sight by the end of the year. That's my interpretation of it. But yeah, it's the tricky thing though, when it's like so heavily dependent on investments. So we'll have to keep an eye out to see if there are any more. Hey Bronson, thanks for joining us. But yeah, as Nagasaki said, the producer's letter was kind of the roadmap we wanted for a while. That is true. Like, it's regardless of when it happens, just knowing kind of what the plan is, that alone is a lot more than we have ever gotten about, like, actual specifics about what an alpha would actually look like. It's more of a to-do list than a roadmap, but I still think it conveys the same idea. It accomplishes generally the same thing. It gives us something to follow along with, as throughout the year, they can say we completed this, and we can actually see on the to-do list, like, as they get closer. So that's a good part of it. But yeah, sometimes even if it is kind of disappointing in that it seems like there's more to be done than you might have thought, because I think there was this narrative where it's like, oh, it's just a matter of more world building and then it'll be ready. It's like, yeah, it's not quite that. It's not quite that easy. Like, there's still a decent to-do list, but sometimes it is better, I'm glad that they're kind of slowly taking steps toward this direction of just sharing more of their plans, because when you don't say anything and leave it completely up to the speculation of the internet, people kind of start filling in the blanks with whatever nonsense they come up with. So it is good to at least just have something to something tangible to actually track. Let You Live says the post about difficulty mode was an April Fool's joke, right? Yes, it was. Yes, that was an April Fool's joke. Yeah, that's the other thing too, is that I think more than anything, the fact that it's very clear that, for one thing, they do really want to, they want a high quality product. They want to put their best foot forward. And I think that's a good sign, because if they really were that desperate, then the right move probably would be to just throw it out there and hope for the best. You know what I mean? Like, if they're really that desperate, they're like, all right, we'll we're just going to run with it. We'll announce an alpha date, and then that will get the juices flowing, and then we'll just kind of like hope for the best. That would be a pretty desperate move. There might be a lot of people that would like that, because they're like, finally I get to play. In the short term, that might seem like the right idea, but in long term, if you think long term, that's probably, if it's not, certainly not until they get the network stack ready. Like, that's such a fundamental thing where it's like you can't support that many players until that's set up. And keep in mind too that that takes a lot of time, and that's kind of Kyle's project mainly. But while he's doing that, that takes a matter of months. But then also concurrently, the rest of the team is working on these other things on the to-do list. So it's not necessarily just, okay, what's number one on the list? Okay, check, we do that. Okay, now we move on to number 2. What's this? Okay, we do that, check, and then you go one by one by one. There's a lot. I mean, it's a juggling act. There's things going on concurrently all the time, and so you could have long periods of maybe nothing is getting checked on the list, and then all of a sudden multiple things get checked on the list because everybody reached their multiple people kind of reached their goals simultaneously. So that's it's what makes it a little bit more complicated. But that's the thing. It's like, because the general public is just not used to how game development actually works. And on top of that, you've got crowdfunded game development, which is just a kind of whole nother beast on its own. It's a difficult thing to convey, but Roan Rain says, big streamers playing it too early could be bad. If the game isn't in a decent state, it's a tough one because more eyes could really help as well, but you can only have one first impression, obviously. Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. That's exactly what it is. It's a very tough position to be in. Like, it's hard to really say what the right answer is, but yeah, I tend to agree that if you're gonna just lay it all out there for everyone to see, like I said, you only get one first impression, and I think there's a lot of potential to really surprise people and really make some waves if it is just in a really good spot, because there's this perception around the internet. There's a lot of people that just don't really understand what Pantheon is and how the development process has gone down, and they have very low expectations for it. So if the expectations are already that low, might as well just kind of, again, if you can afford to, which it seems like they can, just kind of grin and bear it for a little bit longer, really dot your I's and cross your T's, and then go at it, with your best foot forward. And the better it is, the more likely it is to kind of catch people off guard. They're like, whoa, I thought this game was dead and it's actually good. You know what I mean? So that it's such a tricky thing. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to go down. That alpha is, I've been saying it for a while. It's going to be one way or the other. It's going to be a critical turning point for the game. So Donler says, hey Baz, hope you've been well. I have been well. I've been having a lot of fun lately. It's been great. So also, that reminds me, part of the reason why I've been doing so well, and kind of ties into what we were just talking about. Yesterday, so I released my monthly, I guess you could call it a newsletter. It's called the Lantern, which actually, if you go into my About tab on my Twitch channel, you can see the link to sign up to get it it's something I just send directly to your inbox, and just kind of, for people who are really interested in what I'm up to, just kind of, I like to keep people up to date on, again, if you're just kind of a casual observer, maybe you want to stay in the loop with Pantheon, but don't really have the time to do that on a daily basis. Even just once a month, I just kind of send out all, the videos I made that month and just kind of what I've been up to. But I also teased in this one that my next project, which I've been also kind of teased on Twitter a few weeks ago, this big project. I'm in the middle of a big project that I'm excited to start talking about more because it's going really well, where I am making a YouTube video that is going to chronicle in detail, painstaking detail, the entire process of Pantheon from day one until where we are now. Because I think it's very important that when people are talking about Pantheon, whether you've been following it for a long time or you're brand new, context is king in everything. And I think even if you've been paying attention to Pantheon for a while, I think this is going to shed a lot of light on things and really provide some really important insight as to what has actually gone down and why it's gone down that way. And I'm really excited to get it out there because I think it's very necessary. As I read more comments on the daily, it's just painfully obvious to me how a lot of people, they're just misinformed, and their judgments then as to where things are actually at are kind of misguided because they're just not working with a complete picture. And I can't really blame them because, again, like I was talking about earlier, like it's been a long process, and it's also been a process that is just it's just so unlike anything that's ever really that people are used to, that's ever really happened. And it's had its ups and it's had its downs, and so I'm just at a point where I just I want to get it all out there in one place. People can just kind of digest it all. And it's been interesting for me too, because I mean, as you know, I've been following the game super closely for like this month. April will be a 5-year anniversary, actually. I feel like I've been following it as closely as you can, but there's still, as I'm really digging into the research, I'm going back and reading old like blog posts, interviews, forum posts, videos, like everything. And I'm still learning, I'm still piecing things together. I'm like, oh, this relates to this. And so I figure if I'm still learning things, then it really needs to be out there for everyone to see. So I'll be curious to see how people react to it, because I think it's going to be good. Thorndeep says, how long do you anticipate the video to be? Still, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going like in BazgrimTV fashion, I'm trying to keep it as short and concise as possible, while at the same time getting all of the necessary information in there. And that's the challenge. That's what's taking me a long time, is kind of constantly, making tweaks to the script, to thinking like, is this like really, do people really know this? Do they need to know this? Is this essential to the story? Because I just can't, I can't fit all 7 years worth of history into a video of a length that people would want to, most people would actually want to sit and watch. Because again, like the point of this is that that both people who have been following it for a long time and people who have really only been distantly aware of it can both sit down and get something out of it. but I also realize that, you know, if the people that are kind of like maybe skeptical or only semi care about it, you know, I still think they deserve to have that information, but I also can't really expect them to sit down and watch like a 3-hour video or something. So that's what I'm working on now. I think, you know, after I'll upload this video from tonight to YouTube, but after that, you know, I'm gonna have to like go heads down for a little while and really crank out that video. It is coming along well, but that's what I'm up to. So if I had to estimate, like, I think like 20 minutes, certainly no longer than 30 minutes as far as the length that I'm like shooting for, that I feel like I can get the essential information. Again, like people, I'm sure that there's people going to be like, oh, well, like, what about this? It's like, you know, yes, obviously there's been other things that have happened, but did that really affect the actual trajectory of the process? Not. I'm spending a lot of time trying to really discern that, but I'm going to try to keep it under 30 minutes. Stumbling Irish says you said that's going to be on your YouTube. Yes. Yeah. And I'll make sure I give plenty of heads up on that. But again, if you haven't already, subscribe. Again, the link is down below. You can go subscribe, and that way you'll get notified when it's posted. We're going to be tuning in to the dev stream here in just a minute. Asher305 says one of the bigger streamers, Asmongold, has mentioned giving it a try, and that would be a lot of eyes on it. He's going in not expecting much, and if Pantheon conspires people, it could be great for the game. That's a perfect example. If it can pleasantly surprise Asmongold, like that's the type of waves that they could potentially capitalize on, again, if they do it well, if the game is in good quality, and if they market it appropriately. Now, those are big ifs. It's a lot easier said than done, but the potential is there. And then, like you said, you only have one shot. So I don't think, I'm checking, they should be going, they're not online yet. They should be any second now, though. Hey Hoye, how's it going? I know some of you guys are saying you'd be willing to watch a 3-hour video. I know some people would, and you know what? Someday I will probably do that, to be honest. But for now, it's trying to find that like sweet spot, you know, where I can still, even if you know a lot about Pantheon, still maybe I would be happy if you even just learned one new little nugget of information that kind of made you go like, I never knew that. That would be satisfying to me. And I'm very confident that that's going to happen, because like I said, I have been in my research been finding little nuggets like that. So I think it's going to be really eye-opening for a lot of people. And like I said, hopefully, especially the people who just have kind of these very outdated understandings of where Pantheon is actually at, because you know, it's you really only are as informed as the amount of effort that you put into it. And like I said, and part of it that I would be remiss too if I didn't pin some of the blame on the devs too, where just they're over the years, you know, like I said, it's gradually gotten better, but their communication, it's becoming more and more clear to me that they just kind of end up mostly inadvertently just kind of making themselves look a lot worse off than they actually are. And I think that's unfortunate. Again, like I said, part of me understands, because again, there's no rule book that I'm aware of as far as how to actually go about making a full-scale MMO when you start with zero money. Like, and the whole crowdfunding process, and how do you engage, you know, with your community in a healthy way. Mistakes are going to be made, and mistakes have been made. So it's just a complex thing, and I just really, at this point, like I said, I think that we're fastly approaching a very important time in the game's development, and I think a lot of people just don't realize that. I don't think people realize how, you know, how the project has really kind of like turned over a new leaf recently. It's important. It's just all the story from day one until now. All the context is just so important. Locke said Chris Rowan just followed me on Twitter just now, and I followed him back. I could have sworn I followed all Pantheon guys, but I missed him somehow. You know, he's been on Twitter for a while now, but it seems like only more recently he's becoming more active and engaging on it more. I think he used to, like, he had the account, but he like never used it. Seems like, you know, ever since his like roundtable and stuff that he did with Kilson earlier this month, he said he's going to try to kind of be more of like a front-facing figure for the game, because he's always been just behind the scenes, just kind of doing his thing. But I think he's going to try to be kind of more of an active part of the community, which is nice. And their stream is like still not up. They're late. Am I missing something? They're 4 minutes late. We'll just keep on chatting. Yeah, April Fools. Yeah, there's no stream. Surprise. Bronson says the alpha feedback form the players and how the devs interpret that feedback will make or break the game, in my opinion. Yeah, I prescribe to that theory. Like I said, I mean, it's going to be a critical point for the game, one way or the other, for better or for worse. That's where the rubber meets the road. It's gonna be a really interesting time to see how it all plays out. I know, are they seriously, like, are they trolling us right now? I know that they said, I mean, they announced this days ago. It wasn't April Fool's when they announced it, and they're like, it's not a joke. Let me pull this up here. Like, do I have the wrong time or something? There's no way. All right, join us Thursday, April 1st for a monthly development update. This month, associate game designer Tyler Saicred Stokes takes some time off the farm and joins the team as we go behind the design and balance. Behind the design of balance and progression. It's all happening at 6 p.m. Pacific at twitch.tv/Visionary Realms. It is after 6 p.m. Pacific. I'm on twitch.tv/Visionary Realms. I'll just show you. I'll so you guys can see. I'll pop over here. Of course, my transition's not gonna work. This is where I'm at. I'm at twitch.tv/Visionary Realms, and it says offline. This is the post. This is what we got. It's a good thing I like you guys. Oh, Ronick said there was a delay and would be 5 more minutes. All right, I guess I'll accept that. We can wait. Retro Jim says my Grubhub just got delayed too. Everything's backed up. What is with this? Grubhub, the stream, the Suez Canal. What the heck? Anyway. This is their last stream. I'm just gonna keep refreshing until something happens. Oh, tech issues. Yeah, that happens. That happens. Even Joppa said he was reviewing questions an hour ago. Oh yeah, they posted on the forums for people to like submit questions for them to answer. I was reading through those earlier. Some good questions in there. Hi Gouge 17 says when in doubt blame Saicred. I like the way you think. Let's go with that. Bronson says he's still trying to find his banjo. That's actually probably more accurate than you think. he's gonna like, remember that time Ronick came on like wearing a helmet? Just randomly. Like I feel like he's gonna be wearing a helmet. If Saicred's wearing like a cowboy hat though, or like a farmer's hat, that would be hilarious. That would be perfect. Especially on April Fool's Day. Starts talking in like his country accent, got like straw hanging out of his mouth. Jace Leland says, I didn't even know there was a stream today. I thought your stream title was some April Fool's joke. No, there's no jokes here. It's the first Thursday of every month is when we do these. I'm being dead serious. Bjorn TV Wild says he had to do a corpse run. Also accurate. I'm down in my water because my throat has been kind of annoying me. Not COVID, allergies. It's just that time of year. I don't know if you might have noticed in the last video I uploaded on YouTube where I literally just talked for 40 minutes straight about this alpha to-do list, and like as the time went on, as I got closer to the end, my throat just kept closing up like more and more because I mean I'm just talking and just nonstop, and it was kind of wearing away at my throat because just this time of year. I don't know about where you guys are, but where I am, it's getting warmer, which is nice. It's staying lighter later, and it's been really refreshing. A nice break from what feels like the longest winter ever, but with that does kind of come some allergies, so it's been kind of a little bit annoying, but could be a lot worse. Goofy Warrior Guy says, do you have Valheim? I don't. I haven't played that yet. I hear a lot of good things about it though, you know? So I'm intrigued by it. I'm glad that it's doing well. You know, I've been just kind of keeping an eye on it from a distance. Nagasaki says it snowed here. Where are you that it snowed? Oh, Cape Cod. Okay, that explains it. It's so cheap and so fun. How much is it? I might. Honestly, to be honest, like usually I have a lot of other people in my family. I mean, if you've been watching me for a while, you know this, that like I come from a gaming family, and because because most of my like free time is dedicated towards just like, you know, studying Pantheon and talking to people about it, that I don't really have that much time to just game casually. I've actually been playing a little bit of like old school RuneScape. Actually has been kind of my like guilty pleasure. if I really want to just sit down and just kind of like play a game. But in general, they went live and then they went offline. I caught that. We're getting close. But anyway, yeah, a lot of people in my family that play games, and so I generally kind of like follow their lead. Like if they play something, then I'll check it out. But
and welcome everybody to the Pantheon Rise of the
loud.
Fallen stream for April 1st, 2021. Sorry for the delay in getting started today. We did have some technical snafus, but we should be fixed up. If not, I'm sure you're going to let us know. I'm Brendyn, producer. I'll also be hosting the show tonight, and with me, as always, is Chris Joppa Perkins. Say hi, Chris.
Hey everyone, glad to be here.
And David Ronick-Slough.
Hey guys.
And with us tonight as well, we have Saicred, one of our designers. Say hi, Saicred.
Hey guys.
So we've got a good show for you today. A little bit of fun. Saicred's joining us
how's audio,
as we
guys?
And he's going to go over some of the
decent?
design philosophy behind things that he's doing in the game. Him and Chris are going to talk a little bit about the thought that goes into the combat, some of the tuning, some of the deeper layers, health and mana, DPS, loot tables, a lot of deep discussion. So if you're a fan of Pantheon, fan of MMOs in general, tonight's going to be a fun night for you. We're going to go over the state of the game in regards to classes. We're going to take a look at a video of some of the abilities, and we should probably get started. But before we do, just wanted to send a reminder to you, if you haven't checked it out yet, we did send out a producer's letter last week, which outlined the details for Alpha, the upcoming Alpha. Now, it didn't give a date, but what it did do is we laid out a little bit of a roadmap, which tells you what we're working on and what we intend to do prior to Alpha. It's a great read if you have a chance to take a look at it. But for tonight, we're going to focus a little bit on pre-alpha. We do have another pre-alpha session coming up next weekend, April 10th and 11th. And tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the work that's gone into that with the classes and the tuning and the balance and the stuff. So without further ado, shall we turn things over to you, Mr. Chris Perkins? Take it away.
Sure thing. So been super excited to get Tyler Saicred on a show. I have the privilege of working with Saicred a lot day to day. I don't think there's many days that go by that we're not connecting on multiple levels, just with everything that we're working on. I've had a long kind of growing friendship with Tyler, and also just a lot of admiration for the way that he sees the numbers game, basically, but not just the numbers, the way he's able to extrapolate that out into experience. That's my come from, what, the experience. I know what I want the experience to be. Tyler is able to feed into that, understand that, and then communicate that so well through numbers, through things like, tweaking different aspects of the class abilities, NPC abilities. There really is so many different, the itemization, there's so many different things that he's able to touch and kind of work with. So been super excited. And we want to start by diving into some of the combat philosophy. Tyler, I want you to have a chance to kind of, talk through, as you've come onto the team and spent, these last many months really, peering into the tuning and the balance, looking at the progression, the scaling. Tell us a little bit about, how you approach that philosophy. Feel free to reference some of the early conversations we had, and then where you've kind of taken that since then. And then we'll transition from that into some more specifics on tuning.
Okay. Yeah. So first off, thanks for having me here. It's been a joy. For people that don't know, I started out in the community years ago, 2016 now. And I was doing kind of these things on my own, and somehow found my way on the team.
I was on his show.
So it's been a journey. It's been a really exciting one, and I've got to build those relationships. But kind of as you mentioned, a lot of this has come about through conversations that we've been having back and forth. For people that know Joppa, they know his creative vision and his ideas around these classes and the game, the design, and really it's a partnership that we built to allow me to start kind of honing in on those and seeing how I can bring those visions to life and help him kind of bring that to full circle. making sure that the player experience is both enjoyable as well as in the direction that we want to take it holistically as a game. So, it's been really good, been really exciting. But when I start looking at content, when I start looking at class balance, when I start looking at just the numbers overall in the game, I never want to put aside the first rule of thumb for me and for us as a team is, it needs to be fun. And, numbers are great. You can have every number in the game work out perfectly and, but it doesn't really matter if it's not fun at the end of the day. So we always try to keep that in mind. And that's why you'll always hear me ask players in pre-alpha or anywhere else, how does it feel? It's not, are the numbers making sense? It's just simply, how does it feel? Like, do you feel like it's enjoyable? And that's the number one key for me. So I guess I'll kind of roll back here and just highlight, you mentioned a little bit about what I do in the team. And I wanted to bring up just really what my focus areas are for the team as a whole right now, which is around that class balance and tuning, helping out with, really bringing those visions to life and making sure those feel good. Itemization as a whole is a huge one that goes into it with tuning, statistics, how the drop rates work, how that feels. That also feeds into the rate of progression that we have with the players, the experience, making sure that the content is there and available and that they feel, good about what they're doing and achieving along the way. And in addition to that, content difficulty, really figuring out how we want to address the content difficulty and the challenges that we put in front of players. So it's taken that and all putting it together into a holistic view so that we can start to put all the numbers in that foundation layer there so that everything on top of that is just building upon that fun, enjoyable experience and making those numbers come to life and make sense on the back end as well. But yeah, so talking about tuning, balance, just the game content. I was talking to Jabba just the other day, and I mentioned a story about myself as a young kid first entering MMOs and kind of how that fed into a lot of the challenge and difficulty I have within the combat and the content that we have in Pantheon. And it kind of it sprung upon me when I was actually doing a tuning pass just a few weeks ago, where my youngest and oldest were over here. I have a 5 and 8 year old, and they were watching me do some tuning and wanted to try the game out. And so my 8-year-old got on and tried it out a little bit, and I noticed that there were some certain things that he wasn't grasping very quickly, and so I started watching him and learning as he was playing. And it reminded me of when I started EverQuest. And for y'all that may be around my age, I was 10 going on 11 years old when EverQuest came out, and I got it on my birthday just a month after release. And so I'm an 11-year-old kid playing EverQuest and entering this world for the first time. And I remember being naive about it. I wasn't there to, conquer any giant raid boss or take on any elite dungeon content. I was really there just to explore and be a part of the world and the socialization. And that was what really brought my love about when it comes to MMOs. That was what made me passionate about the MMO space. So because of that, I always take that in consideration when I'm looking at the balance and the tuning that we have within Pantheon, because I look at my 8-year-old, I look at my 5-year-old, and I want them to be able to have that sort of experience as well, to where they can step into a game and they can actually get in and enjoy it to that level as well. They can start to fall in love with, exploring and getting through the world and the content, and figuring things out even at their young age, like many of us did with EverQuest and other games way back in the day. And I then want to be able to also take in those 20-year-old veterans that we have in the community, including myself. And I want to make sure that we have things that are challenging to them, obstacles in place that really put them on edge and make them rethink how they're approaching the combat, the encounter, the scenario, the situation, so that they can enjoy it just as much as, the 8 and 10-year-olds that we have that might enjoy it as well. There's definitely two roads that run parallel there. There's the newcomer, and then there's the old timer. So we want to make sure that we have content in place that addresses both of those individuals. And that's really where my focus has been at. It's how do we get those two roads parallel? How do we make it so that feels right? It feels meaningful. It means that, we have the new Pantheon explorer coming in and really getting their feet wet and just enjoying being a part of the social experience and being a part of the game. And then we have things in place that are really challenging, those obstacles that are just hard to overcome and take players time, effort, and, some strategic thinking to really, outmaneuver. So that's just I wanted to get that high level out there to level set with everybody where my mentality comes from when I look at a lot of the content in the world and how the balance comes about. So wanted to say that first. And then secondly, when we start talking about how we look to progress with the balance of the game, how do we start to bring to life everything? I always start with the content first. And I know I've talked to Chris about this many times, but it always comes to the world. You build the world first and you put the world there. And then we put the classes together and we give them toolkits to go out there and to take on this world and to overcome challenges in this world. But we're not necessarily putting a prescription down of exactly what you have to do. It's more, here's what you have in your arsenal. Let's see what you can do with this to make the experience your own and to go out there and explore and be a part of it and see what you can actually achieve on your own. So it's much less about getting down to that little bitty nth degree of a decimal, whether something is good or not. And it's more about making sure that we give everyone a really good and solid experience as far as fun, enjoyable combat goes. And
what is Ronik laughing at?
I see Ronik over here laughing. I'm curious. Can you fill me in?
No, I'm just listening to you talk, buddy.
Their dynamic is so interesting.
Okay,
I think it was I like that you're making content for 8-year-olds because I think that's about my level. So I think that works out well for me.
Well, I had you in mind as well. My 8-year-old's a little better, so I was looking at my 5-year-old.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, he found the mouse now, so he's good. But okay, so Chris, I know we go back and forth a lot, right, when we have our conversations, and I'd love to just kind of keep that flow and that mentality. So, now that people know a little bit about me and where my thought process comes from in general, is there anything specific that you would like to highlight, that you would like me to emphasize a little bit more on for the community or anybody?
Yeah, I think let's take what you just described, which I think is an awesome foundation. You're looking at the accessibility of the game, knowing how much we emphasize exploration, discovery, as a tenet of the gameplay. And so, we don't want, people to hit a wall of, insane difficulty right out of the gate. There needs to be a flow into the more difficult aspects of the content. But then also we obviously, we cherish challenge as, a true pillar of the game. So with that context in mind, I think 3 of the specific things tuning wise that we want to talk about and look at, and I think it would be good for you to talk through, with what you've just shared in mind, how has that kind of guided this process specifically? Let's start with the health and the mana formulas and talk through some of the changes that we've made there over the last several months based on testing and then also based on this kind of vision you just described.
Yeah, perfect. So it's actually been one of the biggest changes we've had to make, just for the statistics alone is getting our health and mana in a better state so that we have a little more flexibility and room to maneuver within the combat scene. It was very, very strict early on. We had a very limited pool. Everything was tied very, extremely heavy or lopsided to the stat. And because of that, we wanted to balance that out a little bit. We want to have our stats matter and be meaningful and really be impactful in the game. But at the same time, we also wanted to have a little bit more cushion and foundation at the just base level so that our players didn't just immediately walk into an encounter and if they didn't have a said single stat or two, fall over from one shot. So we've been working on that and really fine tuning how that looks going forward, scaling that so that it appropriately works with our combat scenarios, not only at level 1, but continues to scale through the higher levels. I've told you many times, but I always take that 1 to 100 approach when I'm looking at scaling. Anything is formula based. It's always going from level 1 to 100. And then we work our way in intervals there to make sure that we're kind of balancing along the way, doing some checkpoints and along the way and things. So when it comes to health and mana, we've actually done a pretty big overhaul of that. And probably one of the things I'm most excited about for our pre-alpha testers coming up here in the next sessions is allowing them to give some feedback on that because they've been very constructive on the past sessions and making sure that we are aware of how that felt ultimately to them and also how it scaled, how they felt like the progression was going with that as they were leveling up. So hopefully they'll be coming in to find that, you know, that has been not only updated, but is feeling much more in line with some of their expectations, but also just in a better spot overall. It's been a pretty big update here in the last few months, so I'm excited about that one myself.
Me too. Yeah, I think the most impactful feedback for me was, you know, I'm level 8, level 9 shaman, and we're fighting a little group of bandits, and I'm getting one shot, I'm getting two shot, you know, if I pull aggro. And so I think you explained that well. We want our attributes to be really meaningful, but there's a balance there between making them so meaningful that every one of them is like a bleeding edge that you can fall off, you know, on dramatically, versus, you know, kind of leveling out that a little bit to where we still have, you know, very impactful attributes, but it's not, you know, one shot, two shot situation as a level 8. So it's been good work.
Yeah, it was a little bit rough for a short time, but you know, it's one of those things where you have to build that foundation out, and you have to experience that a little bit, and you have to let it play out just a little bit to see how that feels, and if anything changes by, you know, adjusting a few things here or there before you make some big changes to the actual formulas and how those are coming about themselves. So, you know, I know people that have given feedback, they want that immediate result, they want that immediate turnaround, but we do like to let these things kind of play out a little bit so we can see if there's any change just by changing a variable over here or over here, you know, how long it took a player to get there, what gear they had, what the attributes were overall. There's a few things we want to test out, so we do a few different runs. And if we see that there's ultimately just no way to get around doing an adjustment there, then we'll make the adjustment, and we make sure that it's fun, enjoyable. And so that's the experience that we want to, you know, see come out in the next PA session. I'm excited about it.
So I think that's a good segue into the next two topics, which is talking a little bit about how we've adjusted the DPS, both of the classes and the NPCs, and then how the loot tables and the itemization in general has kind of followed along with that.
Oh yeah. So so as mentioned, when it comes to, you know, us in our pre-alpha state right now, we loaded, and I'll start with the loot tables. So we really loaded those loot tables up to feel bulky because we wanted our testers to get a lot of loot very early, very often, to give us some feedback on how some of those statistics and stats from the loot came back. We wanted to not only that, but they had very limited time to play. So we wanted to make sure that during their limited time to play, they were able to acquire quite a bit so that we could get some testing on that and some feedback, you know, at a very small degree at least. And with that, you know, now that we're looking and shifting into that alpha mindset and driving that direction there, you know, we have to make some adjustments to the loot tables to get them more in line with what we'd like them to see long term. And so as we're starting to move there, we've made adjustments. So now that you see the loot tables, they're going to be much more in line with what you would consider more realistic to kind of more release state. And, you know, it's not going to be as early and often that you get all the gear that you were getting before. You're going to see that the coin values have been updated to make more sense and be more, you know, acknowledge that we do have, you know, some progression pieces where you're going to have to take a little time to maybe earn something or to achieve something. And so we've done that with the loot tables by lowering that loot that you're getting ultimately and making sure that it's more meaningful along the way. In fact, I've actually gone through and added some nice surprises through the loot tables, you know, to really, you know, give players something to look forward to in the next coming sessions. And it won't be as readily available as it was before, but definitely some good stuff out there now. And then in addition to that, I also talked about, you know, as a kid, the magic of an MMO when I first got into it, the thing that really caught my attention and drove me to just fall in love with the game and the genre overall was kind of that unknown factor, and kind of running into, you know, even as a kid, I was running into walls where I had to get friends and I had to come into this area because I couldn't do it myself. And then we'd have to overcome the challenges in front of us to, you know, get to the next layer or the next level or, you know, whatever it was, whether it was the top floor, bottom floor, basement, or whether it was just trying to get to a new zone because there was a lot of obstacles in our way that we couldn't overcome alone. But we ended up, you know, I'd get with a group of individuals or I'd find some teams here or there, some groups, and we'd start to accomplish these challenges. And so when I'm looking at putting DPS on the map, it's really now starting to put in some of those checks for the players. In the past, we've made it to where it's a little more accessible. We've made it to where the NPCs may not be as caliber or as challenging as we're going to intend them to be, and now we're starting to turn that dial up a little bit. And I'm excited to see what that feels like to our players as they now start to come into those encounters where they may have been a level or two lower and a full group and still able to achieve success with minimal deaths or something like that. And now they may run into that same encounter or scenario, and it's not the same result. It may take them back a little bit. They may have to reset and rethink their strategy, or they may have to come back into it a little bit later once they've gained a few levels. And so yeah, I'll just kind of leave it at that and say I'm excited to get some feedback as we go through this next session.
We do have a rage quit command in the game too, so for our pre-alpha testers, if you want to try that out, and maybe we can just see how much that is used after these new tweaks. If there's too many rage quitting, then we know we're going the wrong way.
Too far, right? Just
I want to know who let loose all the comedians in chat tonight.
I know they're
I'm having a really hard time keeping.
They're egging them on.
It's April Fool's Day. What do you expect? Right. Yeah.
Tell you what.
I mean, I'll put the helmet on if you guys want. Like.
That's what I was saying.
That's something you got to go with your gut on, man.
Yeah. Maybe when I ask the questions later, the helmet will come out.
So one of the things that when we talk about progression, we talk about balance, progression, combat, all the things we're discussing, classes is a pretty big theme, I guess, in terms of, how are these things affecting the current classes? And then we wanted to talk a little bit tonight too about just kind of what to expect on the class front. What classes are we working on currently? What classes can you expect? What are some of the changes that we've been making with the current classes, etc.? So let's start with what to expect class-wise. We know right now for our pre-alpha testing sessions, the one we're going into, the upcoming one, we're going to have the Dire Lord, the Shaman, the Dire Lord, the Shaman, the Wizard, the Rogue, and the Enchanter. Those 5 classes are, the kind of the standard fare that we've had for a while, and those are the classes that we chose very specifically to kind of kick off the class implementation post refactor. There's a lot of reasons for that. We call them kind of foundation classes, basically, where because of the type of mechanics that those classes need, oftentimes the other classes are built on the back of those classes. They're built on the backs of the mechanics of those classes. So those 5 classes represented the 5 kind of, they covered the roles and the archetypes we wanted and needed for complete testing. They also were very foundational. The classes we're moving into next are going to be the Monk, followed by the Ranger, followed by the Summoner. And it's kind of the same thinking there with those 3 classes. Not only are those 3 classes, not only do they have the more complicated mechanics underneath them to support them, things like the pet system, things like ranged combat, the Monk using a completely unique suite of animations, and also a lot of unique ability types. Charge up abilities, for example, is going to be a significant one with the Monk. So abilities where you can tap the key to get an instant, effect, but you can also hold it down and charge it to release a greater effect. You'll see things like that in like Gap Closer for a Monk with, you can think of their Raging Gale kick, which is kind of like a Liu Kang kick from Mortal Kombat, where you can actually charge it up and then release it and fly greater distance to your target and crack them real hard with a kick to the face. So, but those are the kind of those are the reasons why we've chosen those 3 classes to do next, because as we're looking towards getting to alpha, part of the road to alpha is going to be obviously getting our classes further along, and we want to start earlier with the more complicated ones. So those are the next 3 classes that you can expect, which is super exciting. And in addition to that, again, as foundation classes, we're going to be able to continue to build out more complex NPC encounters as well, because now we're going to have NPCs who are able to use pets. We're going to have NPCs who are able to use the ranged combat system. And we're going to just see a variety of different abilities that will now be supported as those classes become fully implemented. Now, in addition to that, I'd love, Tyler, to kick it back to you. Let's talk a little bit about some of the tweaks we've been making to classes, the current classes, based on some of this greater balancing and tuning we've been doing.
Yeah, so the current class is specific. I mean, it's been really encouraging and eye-opening to how players are utilizing certain classes. You know, we come into it with an expectation of, here's the kit that we're providing you, and here's what we expect that you're going to do with this kit. And it never fails that our player base is creative and innovative, and they come up with these unique ways to utilize these classes that are very, not only encouraging because it kind of surpassed what we expected it might be able to do, but it also helps us to understand where we might want to go with some of the tuning and tweaks in the future. And so with that in mind, it's really now starting to isolate the identity of the classes and start to really emphasize on giving them the kit that allows them to really focus on that and to really bring that to the forefront of what they're capable of doing. In addition to that, it's not only that, but it's giving them some, I don't want to say guardrails, but basically guardrails in place so that we continue to keep them kind of in check to what they're capable of doing or not. Some players have shown us some really, like I said, some really exciting ways to play a class, and some players have shown us that it's very difficult to understand certain classes. So we want to make sure that they're not only kind of there to discover, but they're a little bit intuitive to start with. You kind of get into a class and you start to understand it, you understand the logic and feel to it, and you start to really build upon that. And so that's where that early to late game experience comes in. We want to try to make sure that not only feels good, but that the tuning in place makes sure that they, when in a group, feel like they're meaningful, feel like they matter, feel like they have a matter or a success in that group that's really substantial for that group's success or not. I know I've mixed my words up there. I started reading chat. And So anyways, with that said, more specifically, looking at things like, threat generation is one that comes up a lot. So looking into that and how we're going to be approaching that in the future, how that continues to be dialed in and addressed. Looking at our, health and mana. Like I said, we have some big updates that went in with that. So we have to now address things like DPS for the classes themselves, because the health and mana updates not only apply to the players themselves, but they apply across the board. So NPCs and players alike also, receiving that update, and that's going to make sure that we are looking to now tune and adjust for the damage that our players are putting out, the damage our NPCs are putting out, and the health that are the mana and the health that, like a shaman, they're going to have to heal through what's being put out there, or potentially have the kit available to heal through that. So we want to start focusing in on that a little bit and put that out there to say that, that's going to be a highlight for us as we go forward as well, to really focus on those substantial numbers, those key factors for those classes to be successful. And I don't want to ever leave out our crowd control, trying to lock in or dial in, how potent crowd control is, what that ends up being in the long run, and how that feels for the player as well. So that, we're not overlooking that as kind of that fourth layer for that group and bringing it all together. I know it's a little bit general. Did you have anything in mind that you wanted me to hone in on for anybody? I hate to be general like that, but there's so much when it comes to these numbers, and personally, I love when players get to experience it and figure it out themselves. I know that sounds maybe cheesy to some, but part of the enjoyment from MMOs that I've had in the past was always getting in and discovering what's possible, discovering how things work. I've always felt if you gave me everything up front and told me how everything worked, then I would just go theorize it. And by the time I get into theorizing, I've already kind of missed the fun. A big majority of the fun, like I said, is that unknown quantity. It's how do these things work? What's possible? What can I find out there? What ability might drop out in the world now that I might not know about and might change the way that I play the class entirely, something like that. So I don't know if there's anything you want me to dial in on there, but I think that's a good baseline for the community, at least for now.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's well said. And the only thing I would add is that, as we make changes to classes, as we look to get them implemented, we're looking for successful implementation of abilities, making sure they work, making sure they function well. But we're also, at this stage, very much wanting to make sure that the intended goal, the intended flavor, the intended feeling of playing these classes, the experience they're meant to encapsulate for the player, is being achieved. And so this is also the stage where we're looking at, the current arsenal of abilities, both, in combat, and then kind of the secondary out of combat, extracurricular type abilities that, the different classes have, and just making sure that the class framework and the feeling and the experience of these classes is actually happening. It's one thing to have everything on paper. It's another thing to, is it really playing like we intended to in terms of the overall feel? So that's a big part of our scrutinizing right now. But no, yeah, I think you said it well. I'm super excited for the upcoming tests. It's been a little bit since our last one, so there's a lot of changes. I think the game is in a significantly improved and more thoroughly developed state when it comes to everything we've been discussing tonight. I think that's going to be very palpable, and I'm really excited for the feedback, as I know you are as well.
Yeah, I will say we get feedback early and often from our community, whether they're watching through streams or whether they're in the pre-alphas or, enjoying that. And it's encouraging. It's always encouraging, and constructive or not, it's always encouraging, because it means that they're not only paying attention, but they're starting to discover things that, just watching. It's amazing to me how quickly the players start to pick up on little subtle hints out there in the world and things that are happening. But in addition to that, like you said, we've got the foundation now, and now we can start looking to implement on top of that for these classes as well going forward. We can start to build out those kits a little bit more and show some of the creative and fun solutions or pieces of that toolkit that we've got on the back burner that have not yet been discovered or been made aware of to the community. So I think there's a lot of fun to come with these classes, even as the foundation classes. There's a lot of things that players are going to get to uncover and discover with these classes that are possible, in the future. So,
oh yeah,
exciting.
How do you make a dummy bleed?
Cool.
That's what I want to know.
Very cool. Well, I know we've got a pretty sizable QA section cooked up for us. We also want to get a few patch notes in.
I'm just going to keep this video running. We still have lots of samples. So I'm just going to keep that running while we do the Q&A.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Yeah. First of all, I just want to say that I hadn't seen the new monk animations. They look amazing. The backflips and stuff are sweet. Okay. Mm-hmm. This is for either of you guys who.
Well, we're gonna do patch notes first, right?
Patch notes. That means Dave sings.
I thought you were getting ready to sing.
Oh.
Yeah, he was trying to dodge that.
All right, I'm gonna go through this super quick. Yeah.
Whatever happened to Nathan Napalm's jingle?
If you got a list,
that's what I want to know.
Fixed the shield bone mask for casting animations, massively huge server performance gains from spawn system optimizations and memory use reductions, massive RPC performance improvements, animator calling updates, optimized light calling.
I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. When you say massive, it's massive. Like we're kind of laughing about it internally here, but when those updates were coming in, the wording that was used was massive performance updates and massive, but they were massive. There's no other way to describe it. The performance updates were massive. Really good stuff.
Yeah, we can tap Kyle to get him to put into layman's terms like how to quantify how much of an improvement it was. I mean, it is truly massive. We optimized light culling, optimized action animations, several fixes to equipment rendering. Again, massive client server performance improvements related to inventory modifications specifically, as well as crafting and vendors. Those are three major optimizations, three major performance improvements over the course of this month, which just been really exciting. A few fixes to world item responsiveness. That includes a fix for the potential to loot extra world items when spam clicking, depending on whether there was high latency involved. Fix for items overflowing in the crafting UI. Item buffs now reapply on Resurrect if they don't persist death. We've had several font rendering improvements. We've improved the character ground snapping at high movement speeds. And we've improved climbing hit detection. We fixed some herky-jerky issues with transitions between moving into climbing into hanging and those state changes. We fixed several issues with world items becoming unclickable when moving between zones that have large differences in networking time. And on the 3D art front, there's been a ton of massive ongoing work with the terrain tech. It's something that is just super exciting that we'll be talking more about soon.
Jeez.
And we've seen the elkhorn and the birch tree variations come online, which is for Thronefast, Aventur's Pass, a lot of the eastern side of King's Reach in those areas, in the biomes of those zones. So it's been really awesome. Some amazing work that Jimmy's done on the trees to see those come online. It's just really been exciting to see. So we'll leave it there. Again, these are not exhaustive. These are meant to be highlights. And then on top of that, a lot of the class stuff and the class work we've been talking about, in addition to all the balancing and the tuning, is also a big portion of the work that's been being done this month. And we'll leave it there. All right, David, kick it to you.
Sweet. Okay, I'm just going to kind of jump around here a little bit. We'll start with, is it currently a public design goal that any class will be able to perform 3 combat roles? So I think they're kind of talking a little bit about how the rogue, is kind of hitting in that CC area, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine, Tyler, we'll tag team several of these.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to just kick it off, like it is a design goal. I would say it could be a stated design goal that classes that have defined primary roles would be able to flex into a secondary role for a period of time. And I use that word flex specifically, not just to say they can, move into a different role, but if you think about like literally flexing a muscle, you can only do it for so long. You can only flex for so long until you have to release that. And so the idea is when classes are able to flex into a secondary role, it's for a limited period of time, and it's at the expense or the cost of their primary role. You're not going to see a rogue, for example, be able to top the DPS charts while they're doing anything really regarding crowd control. That's not the intent. We also want to be very careful about not, the question asked about 3 roles, and that's certainly not the plan. We want classes to operate according to a primary role and be able to flex at time for shorter periods of time into secondary roles, depending on what class it is.
Cool.
Anything to add to that, Tyler?
Yeah, and I would add, so I know that people highlight the rogue, for example, where they were able to Minus showed off the rogue's capability of doing CC, and that comes into tuning and passes that we'll do to tweak that to make it feel exactly how we want it to feel. It might be a little strong right now, and in that case, that's fine. But you also have to consider if there were classes like the Enchanter brings not only that crowd control functionality, but they also bring other pieces to their arsenal that the rogue can't provide. So when we start to look at the mana consumption and start to really tune that and dial that in to really make that feel, significant, that Enchanter and their capability within the area of mana that may become very pivotal for a group. So it's not only the fact that they can perform that primary function, but they also have alternative means or reasons to bring them and to really fulfill what they're doing within that group and make it more than somebody's secondary, function that they're flexing into. So, I think that we have to always remember there's not just, 3 primaries for us. We focus on 4 when it comes to design. We have, the 4 types there, and we really want to make sure that those are emphasized and that they're meaningful and that they're thought of throughout. We don't want to ever kind of leave one off or not think of it or not consider it. And so we're always keeping that in mind and first and foremost. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of small tuning that goes into that over time, and we'll definitely dial that in as we go through pre-alpha and alpha. But it's going to be it's going to be something we have to make sure that classes are not so one-dimensional that you just basically have to hope that nobody else in the server is playing your class so you can find a group. So
before we move on from this, I kind of want to say again too, because I see this question come up a lot in the form of a concern, that there's concerns that, you know, we're going to end up in a situation where all classes can kind of do all things, and there's a lot of homogenization. And I just want to make it clear and also remind everyone that, like, the reason we have intentionally stayed away from a talent system, the reason we've intentionally stayed away from specializations within classes is specifically because we value class identity so highly. So you're not going to see a situation where we are allowing that to slide so far that we start having classes, you know, blurring the line and leapfrogging into different class roles. That's just a line that we're not willing to cross. Do we believe that we can allow classes to flex for limited periods of time into secondary roles? Yes. Has the Rogue in recent streams proven to be able to go beyond that point and, you know, literally, you know, fill the full competent role of a CC dedicated class? Yeah, I think they have. I don't necessarily want them to, you know, be overly nerfed, I guess you could say, in terms of their CC ability, because it's a really important aspect of the class.
Poor Minus.
But it's a little too easy right now. There's really not a whole lot of risk involved in terms of, you know, even the sense that their ability could be resisted or could be, you know, there's just a lot of variations to come in, or variables that are not at play yet, that just make it a little too easy and a little too clean for a Rogue to lock down so much. That being said, it's a really important part. You know, the same with a monk being able to flex into an off-tank role. That needs to be a significant thing, something that monks genuinely have occasion to want to do, but flex. So limited time at the cost of their primary role, you know, have some risk to it, or at least some tension involved in it. That's the idea.
I'm glad you guys cleared that up, because I don't want people actually thinking that Minus is a good player. Okay, moving on. Does balance mean that all characters should perform equally well in one specific encounter zone, or will some perform better in one situation versus another, and then in another zone encounter the opposite would hold true? I hope you got that.
I'll let you take this time.
Yeah, that was a long one there, but so I guess what we're hearing is, are we going to be looking at situational, you know, I guess you could say importance versus nonsense, like just kind of generalized? Is that what you're trying to sum it up to?
I think they're asking, you know, basically if characters does balance mean they can perform well in one area and not in another, if that's intended, or
I just wanted to see you stumble through that for a minute. So really,
you know, and you know, when CP was talking about flexing, I was gonna make a joke that you've been doing it this whole time, like, you know, but it's cool, like, you know, I thought we were on this peace thing, but I guess that's out the window. So I see where we're at. It's because I picked on your buddy Minus. I know.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just say, so, you know, having classes be able to perform better in certain situations is definitely going to be viable. You know, we're going to have, like you said, class identity is important. Certain classes have unique kits and skill sets and tools in their arsenal that allow them to perform very well in certain situations. And yes, when it comes to balance, you know, that's part of the equation, where we have to consider that where one class may excel in a certain situation, they may fall very weak or feel very weak in another situation, because they're vulnerable to that aspect or that situation more so than, you know, other classes may be. So it's a way of balancing, of course, but there's a lot that goes into that, you know, and there's also potential ways that players can find to kind of mitigate those, you know, situations, to where they may have to look at their gear, lay out their arsenal in which they're coming to the plate with, as far as like what their abilities are. But not only that, they may have to look at what their group comp is. It may not be that, you know, they may not be able to just overcome that situation alone. They may have to rely on their other teammates to change the way that they're approaching that situation to help them out along the way. Whereas in another situation, they may not need their team at all. They may be able to really excel in their team with their group to take on that encounter, or that, you know, overcome that without anybody having to change anything. So it not only becomes part of the balance in the classes, but it becomes part of the conversation and how the players are coming together to overcome this together. If we make a class somewhat weak in an area, or if we have a you know, design decision to make a class that very strong in an area, there's probably other classes that either one, benefit from that, or two, can help supplement that. So that, at the end of the day, it's all about bringing that group together and them working together to find out what the solution is that they can use in their capability or in their toolkits to overcome the challenge ahead of them. And yeah, I mean, certain cases, certain groups will be more efficient or more effective in certain situations than others, but it doesn't mean that the other group can't be successful. It just means that they may have a little bit tougher time and have to adjust in a different way.
Cool. Good answer. Surprisingly. Okay. When designing and balancing content within Pantheon, do you consider the bards and necromancers spells and abilities? This is a little sneaky question. And do you consider how those classes will affect the content you've created so far?
That's a good question, though.
Yeah, I'll throw this one over to Chris.
Yeah,
well, for sake of time and resources, we've actually just decided to combine the bard and the necromancer into a single class.
Yeah, here we go.
The Necard. I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be a very non-traditional take on both of those classes.
We're always trying to push the boundaries here at Visionary Realms. So
that's right. That's right.
And you guys have been begging for it. You've been asking for it, so we thought we'd answer your call.
Yeah. Yeah. What better, quicker way to get them out than just kind of mash them together? So I think it'll be cool. It's going to be cool.
I mean, singing
and that's the answer.
Riser, that sounds pretty good to me. Yeah. I like the sound of that.
Death singer. That's it. There you go.
The short answer is yes. Yes, we do. The short answer is yes, we do. And I think that'll become more clear as we get, a little bit further along and we're in a position to start talking about those two classes directly. But absolutely. And, Tyler alluded to it earlier as far as, when he's working through, formulas and different things specifically, he's always looking at that from a 1 to 100 spectrum. Like we're looking way beyond the max level at launch to really, make sure that we're accounting for several expansions worth and years worth of growth in the game. It's the same thing with, the classes that we know are coming down the pike. And really a lot of it is building in intentional holes, intentional gaps in, abilities or, different things that specific and unique ways that abilities work together or, looking at the crowd control. Same thing that we've had to do with the healers, same thing we've done with the tanks in terms of you have these classes that are filling the same primary role. How do they do it? And in what specific ways do they do it? So the answer is yes.
Great.
Can I just add that I'm probably more excited about bringing those classes online for a completely different reason. And not only those, but the rest of the classes that we have, because it's going to give me more in the arsenal of challenging content. To your point you made earlier, the classes as they come online, they're giving us new abilities to start putting into the world that players have to be aware of and have to pay attention to. So it's not only bringing those classes online for players to enjoy, but it's also for me to enjoy putting out there and putting those obstacles in place so that players can start to discover those and run into those and find new and unique ways to use those abilities and, in encounters. And having that content available is going to be a lot of fun for me as well. So, yeah, I got to say I'm probably just as excited as the community to get those online, but it's a lot of times for almost a completely different reason.
Okay, moving on. Is it true that Saicred hums the tune for Green Acres while he works, and does he wear overalls during the company meetings while chewing on a hayseed? CP, I don't know if you want to handle that one or.
Chewing on a hayseed? Is that a thing?
Yeah. Okay. What escape mechanisms,
no comment,
if any, are intended for when you realize you're in over your head, or if you are walking through the tall grass and happen upon vicious snakes that you couldn't see? So I guess
definitely depends on your class. Yeah, I mean, it just ultimately depends on your class. It depends on what you've found in the world that's available to you, and certain classes may have a more readily available escape mechanism, something that's just kind of a no-brainer. Other classes may have to be creative and, or may have to look into what's available in their itemization that they can help them out. So there's some potential options there, we'll say, but definitely it just depends on the circumstance in the class and where you're at and what's going on. There's a lot of things that play into that question that, you don't have a one and done answer for in a lot of cases.
CP, you want to add anything or moving on?
It just makes me think of all the times that's happened to me, and you have as many options as your class allows and as your mental state allows in terms of, are you going to freak out and run around in circles and die, or are you going to root it? Are you going to stun it? Are you going to, pop some kind of a run speed potion that you have at the ready? Are you with other people? Is there a guard nearby? Zone line? All kinds of options.
This is a cool one. And will all classes in Pantheon be able to acquire any, some, or all of the available non-combat abilities, skills, spells, or roles? So for context, would a non-rogue be able to detect and disarm traps or pick locks or something of that nature? Or is it all going to, are those things only going to be for classes?
I mean, it's kind of tough to answer that across the board. So let's just use the rogue one, for example. So pick lock. Rogues are kind of the masters of mechanical locks. Whereas wizards would be have more mastery over arcane locks, magical locks. And then beyond that, you get into the realm of keepers and the perception system, where they would have certain advantages on enigmatic locks. So it's not like there's just one skill, like a pick lock, that only rogues have and no one else does, or anything like that. However, there will be some restrictions on just about all of those, unless they're designed to be universal, where not everyone would be able to do it.
We probably have time for one or two more, and then we should probably wrap her up.
Okay. How are you creating tension between the age-old MMO design favoring vertical progression in favor of horizontal progression? I'd throw you an easy one.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And while you're at it, can you explain the ups and downs of RPU?
What?
Yeah,
No.
we'll stick to the progression for a second, and then we'll go to that one next. So like I said, there's the simple formulas put in place to scale vertically throughout, and you can just kind of mathematically lay that out and put that in place. But when you start talking about horizontal progression, you also have to consider what we have currently available and what we may add in the future, and how we could build upon that layer of that foundational layer. So we look at things like the mastery system. We look at things like just experience gain and how fast and quick that is versus what gear is accessible or potentially available to players, how often that drops. All of that plays into the progression of a player, and it may not feel immediately like, oh, I'm horizontally progressing. But if you're gaining more gear to gain access to new areas, but you're not gaining level, I mean, that is horizontal progression. So you might get to an area where you need to be, a climate, when we start talking about climate and talking about, different types of environments that are in the areas, you may have to acquire things that help you overcome that. And that's part of that horizontal progression as well, where players are not just looking to vertically gain levels and experience, but they're also looking to acquire gear and abilities and parts of that toolkit within their itemization that help them overcome things. And so that's a big part of it. And like I said, mastery, I think, is going to be a huge one that's very just fundamentally fun to build out and really allow players to experience and enjoy. But it's going to be really impactful to the player as well to allow them to really expand upon their own skill sets and, as a player, their own experiences in the game.
What gets me really excited? There's another question on there that is like, okay, you just hit level 50.
I was just about to ask the one. Now that's a question.
I think they're really closely connected.
All right, I'm going to ask the question because you're going to steal my job and then I'll get fired.
Okay,
you and your friends hit level 50.
That's not the reason you're going to.
You and your friends hit level 50 finally. You guys log in next. You talk amongst yourselves about what to do next. What are some option players might have? How would that conversation go between you, meaning us, guys right now? All right, now you can answer the question, CP.
Yeah, that's a great question. They're both really good questions. And I'll just say what I'm thinking of right now in this moment, but I love that it's an example of what kind of experience I believe Pantheon is going to offer. You hit level 50, you're no longer leveling up. You can't level up anymore, at least, in the current moment you're in. And there is the gear progression. There is the mastery progression. There is that ongoing vertical progression of I'm making my character incrementally stronger. And I think that's an awesome loop. Always feel like you have something to be chipping away at there. But honestly, the two things that are most exciting to me right now are nighttime and underwater in Pantheon. And I'm going to explain those two things. Nighttime, because when you reach level 50 and you think of all of the zones and all the world that you've gone through and your kind of single path towards max level, and then you've been conditioned through playing Pantheon that this is a lovingly, thoughtfully crafted world with all kinds of nooks and crannies and secrets and places to explore and things to discover. And when you also marry that to the fact that nighttime in Pantheon, both lore-wise and the actual gameplay experience, is going to be an almost completely different experience. This is something that Tim Wathen, Convo, has put a lot of energy and thought into, like, the nighttime experience. And so I'm instantly at level 50 thinking, I want to go back through all of these zones and experience nighttime and explore at night and travel at night and search and talk to people at night and see, like, what are the different kinds of things that are going to happen at nighttime? What might I find? And it's the same with underwater. We've talked about it off and on in the past, and it's not something we're putting a whole lot of emphasis on right now, but the plan, the philosophy of underwater is to lay down the whole overland content just in an underwater setting. In a lot of games, you go underwater and there's just as many NPCs and they're just as dense and it's kind of all the same experience. Whereas what we're going for is more of that, like, murky, expansive abyss. And there's all kinds of, like, aspects to explore and things that you can see down in the murky depths. And you've got the pressure and the anaerobic climates kind of working against you, and you've got currents underwater that are working against you, and you've got these different abilities and itemizations that can help you sink deeper and swim faster and breathe longer and ride currents farther and faster and different things. And you start to just imagine, like, the verticality that Pantheon offers, what that provides in the up and in the down. And that, to me, is one of the things that's most exciting when I think of horizontal gameplay. I'm a huge, like, romantic adventurer and explorer and discoverer at heart. Like, that's the kind of stuff that gets me most excited and energized about these games. And I think Pantheon's going to have it in spades.
We have so many good questions in the chat. I think at some point soon we're probably going to have to do another, like, burning question stream. But I think Ben's probably going to put a kibosh on this one, or we have time for one or two more. Or...
Well, we're at an hour now, so we should probably wrap it up. But I want to thank everybody for coming out and all those questions. We love hearing from you. We love your feedback. Tyler, thanks for coming on. It's great to have you. We'll have you on more for sure. Chris and Dave, pleasure as always having you as well.
There it is.
Yeah, awesome job, Tyler, and great questions, everyone. This was really fun to dig into, and awesome stuff.
If you're just hearing about Pantheon for the first time, we are a crowdfunded game. We do make progress in the game from your pledges. Head on over to pantheonmmo.com/pledge to see what kind of pledge rewards are available to you. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Thanks all.
Bye, guys.
All right. Switch back over to this. Wow, there's that was a lot. There's a lot to process there. It's interesting though. There's some interesting things to extract from that. I'm thinking about the most recently what Joppa was just talking about with the at night and underwater stuff, which sounds really exciting. I have to think about that a little bit more. I mean, obviously, I think we're a little ways away from, like, seeing that actually in game, but That's kind of something interesting to think about. But anyway, Jace Leland says, yeah, the underwater stuff was new to me. Yeah, that was as Joppa mentioned, like I briefly remember it coming up like 3 years ago or something in actually a Voices of Terminus interview that they did with Joppa. And I guess I was pleasantly surprised that, you know, even though that was a while ago, from what I remember of it, it was still like exactly the same as what Joppa was saying now. So I'm glad that it seems like his thoughts on that haven't really changed much at all, which is good because I think they're good thoughts. Like I said, I think we're probably a little ways away from seeing that actually in game, being able to test it. But I like the direction anyway. Silva DeBarber says, "Hey Baz, how's things going?" It's going great. That was a good stream. I'll kind of hit a couple of the highlights, the things that stuck out to me. I got to get going pretty soon here, though. I won't stick around too long, but one of the first things that really stuck out to me that Saicred was talking about that I think kind of like set the tone for the rest of the stream was how it talks about like when he's, you know, his design standpoint, the world comes first. They make the world first, make the encounters first, and then the abilities come after that, and the characters come after that, which I think is a really cool way of doing it, because I think that lends itself to something which is really important in that you have this feeling that the world is not just about you. You know what I mean? You're not the hero of this story, and, you know, the world is not going to bend and warp to accommodate you. Like, the first example that always comes to mind that I just hate so much is games where the NPCs, the mobs, are dynamically scaled to always be the same level as you. So it's like no matter where you go, it's always just an even fight, which I think is just the most boring, stupidest game design decision that I've ever heard of, because it completely strips the world of any character, and you miss out on like some of the most fun memories are, even though it might not seem like it at the time, again, over the long term, it's so satisfying. Like, you know, you spend some time, you work your way leveling up, and then come back later and avenge yourself, you know what I mean? And kill that mob that, you know, owned you all that time ago. So, but that can't happen if the world doesn't have character, you know what I mean? So I think that's a really good way to approach it, in that the world comes first and the abilities come after. You know, then you have this you have this feeling that you're just like any other inhabitant in the world. You know, the world doesn't care that you're there, and it's up to you to figure out what you're going to do about it. You know what I mean? You need to rise to the occasion. I think more MMOs need that sort of thing, because in my opinion, like, that's how the real world works. You know, if you really want to get philosophical about it, like, I think there's very valuable life lessons to be learned in that, where, you know, you can't expect everything you encounter to just bow down to meet you. You know, you need to rise to the occasion. So I'm really glad that that's kind of the philosophy behind it. So other things that kind of stuck out to me were the... Sorry, I'm still dealing with technical stuff. I really like that the ranger and the monk and the summoner are coming next. It made a lot of sense what Jabba was talking about the kind of doing the classes first that cover a lot of cover a lot of different types of abilities. And also then how once those abilities are into the game, then they can also give those abilities to the NPCs, and then that makes the fights more interesting as well. But I liked, I liked what Drop was teasing about the different abilities, like even things that seem so simple as having abilities where you can choose whether to just kind of like use it instantly for like a small effect, or charge it up, spend more time to charge it up longer to have a more powerful effect. That's just interesting to me. Like, I know it's not revolutionary, but it kind of gets me excited about just adding little extra layers of combat, more interesting decisions like that, because I think people aren't going to expect that. Like, that's something that again, I'm speaking in general, people who maybe don't watch every single one of these streams every month or something might be under the impression that Pantheon is just aiming to be this very like EverQuest-y style of combat where it's like very slow, and you do like your auto attacks, and then you like press a button and you wait, and then you press another button, and that sort of thing, that style of combat. And well, that's not inherently bad, and that may be the foundation, that might be the very base of Pantheon's combat. There's so many more layers to be added on top of that, and that I think is just one of those very small layers that creates the combat that is a little bit more engaging, and just makes you think a little bit more. I'm all about giving players decisions. Do you want to use this now, very quickly, low resources, to have a smaller effect, or do you want to wait, which may in some situations be more risky? Do you want to wait to have a different effect? And that's also the sort of thing that might not, if you're just watching a stream of Pantheon gameplay, like on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, from the outside looking in, those little decisions may not seem like much, may seem very minor, but when you're actually playing it firsthand, and again, people will start to understand this more as they get into alpha, that it just feels very different when you're actually playing it, because if you're watching, you don't have to make those decisions, but just the brain feel, I guess, how I would describe it, is that it's so different because you actually have to process those things in real time. Anyway, just a few of my thoughts here. I am gonna wrap it up. I don't know why OBS crashed on me. I don't want to push it. Figure out that's never happened. It's never happened before, but I seem to still be having some kind of like issues that I want to figure out. So anyway, really glad that really appreciative for every one of you that decided to tune in here tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you all back here again in about a month, if not before. But like I said, go keep an eye on YouTube, because that's where I am going to be in the meantime. So, I hope you all have a great night and a great weekend, and thanks for watching. See you later.